So it's so nice to be here finally in person. I was at a panel talk, as James mentioned, this time last year, and I spoke about app product management, how to build apps, how to drive engagement. So thank you so much for inviting me back again to speak in person. So just by way of introductions, hello, I'm Amrik. I love building apps, so I'm definitely in the right place. I've had an amazing career so far. I've worked in some amazing companies, from Nando's to KFC, Financial Times, and it's a journey that's led me on to my current challenge, probably the biggest challenge of my career so far. I now work for Which. So a lot of you might not have heard of Which or are not familiar with who we are. Which is the UK's consumer champion. We're a not-for-profit organisation, so we have a charitable side of the company and we have a commercial side. And the commercial side, where we generate revenue, funds all of the charitable work that we do. So we help everyday consumers, like everyone in this room, stay safe and avoid harm. Whether that's advice on buying something as trivial as a washing machine, or whether it's finding support if you think you've been scammed. The Which app currently features over 10,000 lab-tested expert product reviews. That's anything from TVs to mobile phones, right the way through to big purchases like cars and holidays, giving you a place where you can find impartial and unbiased advice. So we're now on a journey of connecting more of our products and services together to help drive growth and retention. So my talk today is all about expectations. Now, we all have expectations, don't we? Expectations of going on holiday, expectations for going for a meal, perhaps, expectations of maybe renovating a house and living in your dream home. Our users have expectations of our apps and our experiences. And importantly, we have expectations for how we go and deliver those products. So I'm going to talk about the expectations versus reality on the journey that we went through in the mobile team at Which. So let's get into number one. We know what we need to build. We can relax. You've probably all heard this before. We know what we're doing, right? Well, the reality, however, no, we don't. Let me explain why. So we had our existing app already in the App Store across both iOS and Android, which we were going to replace. We had a backlog of work, a new design, and a clear launch plan that we engaged with everyone across the organization with in terms of gaining that alignment for what we were trying to achieve. So we got building. We assembled a team, half of which are sat in the audience today, of designers, engineers, and QA. So we're 6 months into our build now, and we've managed to get our app to hundreds of private beta testers. But that's actually when my jaw hit the floor. We went from this to this. But why? Well, when we asked our beta testers, do you find the app useful? 50% of them said no. Why was this the case? That's the first question that we asked ourselves. Did we do something wrong? We knew we needed to probe further and really understand what it is that users couldn't do on the app that they wanted to do. So that's when we went out and we spoke to those users directly. Obviously, during the pandemic, we could only do that through Hangouts. But quite quickly, we understood that we really needed to focus on the problem space a lot better. That's how I felt, literally punched in the face. So starting with that percentage of negative feedback at a whopping 50%, as we tested and iterated new ideas in the problem space that we highlighted, we launched new features. First one was around being able to search for products a lot easier. When we re-engaged those members, the percent of negative feedback went down to 42%. But that wasn't good enough. We continued to iterate. We launched the ability to save products so that you could come back to them later. Again, that reduced the percentage of negative feedback even further. And as we continue to test and iterate new ideas, the last one being the ability to filter products through multiple different facets, the percentage of negative feedback went down to 3%, which was great. It's still not where we need to be. So the reality check that we had was don't assume you know what to build. Instead, talk to your users to understand the problem space better. So that was expectations versus reality number 1. Let's get into number 2. We'll launch on time. How many times have we heard this before? We'll be on time. We'll get this out when we said we would. What does that even mean? That was our expectation. The reality, as you've guessed it, no, we won't. Before I go into what happened at which, I'd love to make this again a little bit more interactive. Please shout out the answer to the following question. What month and year did Instagram launch? Any thoughts, any guesses over here? Any years? 2011, 2009, 2008? Around about that much. So we've got a range of different answers, which is great. The answer is actually October 2010. Why did I ask this question? Well, you might recognize this diagram. We all strive for quality in our apps. But you have several constraints, some of which are time, cost, and scope. Now, I'm sure this diagram looks a lot more familiar to us now. We faced quite an interesting challenge at which was that we set a launch date of October of last year to launch our new app. Based on those early learnings that we had to make a call on whether we would release a slightly subpar experience or prioritize time and then iterate. We actually had so many debates in my squad about what the right path forward was. It was such a big decision for us. We had a lot of alignment, we had a launch plan, we had set a date. But after much deliberation, we eventually decided to prioritize time. Why did we prioritize time? Well, as we learned with the Instagram example, nobody remembers when you launch. Your users will only remember their most recent experience with your app. So the longer you leave it, the longer you delay learning what works and what doesn't. So we actually ended up launching the Which app in October of last year, and now we're 4 or 5 months in, and we've had a steady pace of releases, almost one every week. So the reality check for us here was don't set arbitrary deadlines. Instead, focus on shipping product at pace. So that was expectations versus reality number 2. Let's get on to number 3. And this is my favorite, it's the last one. It will be love at first sight. Our users will love the app, right? We've spent so long building this product, why wouldn't they? Well, guess what happened on day 1 of launching the new Which app? Fire whoever is responsible. Why would you make something 100 times worse? So this is a quote from an actual member. And my team and I read this and we felt edgy, we felt upset, we felt like we had done something wrong. Why would someone post such feedback? I mean, we launched a private beta, we took some learnings, we iterated, and then we launched. And I think actually this is the first time my manager, who's actually sitting in the audience there, has actually seen this, so hopefully nothing happens after this. But before I go into telling you why, I want to tell you a quick story. My 9-year-old son is part of what I call the on-demand generation. Every single morning, he'll run downstairs, switch the TV on, and watch the football highlights from the night before. And when I was 9, I had to wait until Saturday night to watch Match of the Day at 10:30, and if I missed it, that was it. I missed it. There was no on-demand, there was no replay, there was nothing. And I constantly have to remind my son that good things take time. Not everything is on demand. And the exact same goes for the apps and the products that we build. Now, our peers at Sky spent years developing, launching, and iterating their on-demand platform so that we can enjoy an on-demand experience. So everything takes time, especially when our expectations are so high. Sometimes you get feedback that you don't like. So remember that building and scaling a successful app does take time. And this is our last reality check for today. Don't expect overnight success. Instead, build a long-term strategy. So let's recap on those 3 reality checks. And these are my 3 key takeaways for you today. Number 1, don't assume you know what to build. Instead, talk to your users to understand the problem space. Second, don't set arbitrary deadlines. Instead, focus on shipping product at pace. And lastly, don't expect overnight success. Instead, build a long-term strategy. Thank you so much. I'm Amrik Chauhan from Which. If you do have any questions, please do find me in the break afterwards. Thank you.